Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SDR Team Excellence presentation here at the Sales Development Summit hosted by Inside Sales. Today, I do want to spend some time talking a little bit about best practices for sales development. However, I know you're probably watching this while you're at work or at home, and you might be doing a million things. So luckily, you don't necessarily need to be looking at this screen. The only instance when you do is when you want to dive deeper into a topic. Today, I will go and cover a broad spectrum of what it means to have an excellent organization. And if something interests you, you can look at the screen, and I will have a lot of links from different blog posts that I posted online, or we can continue the conversation. Feel free, if you have any questions, to add me on LinkedIn and send me a message and just ask more about how this works, why is this important, or anything else. So let's dive right in. We have about half an hour maximum. We'll see how long this takes, and hopefully we can cover as much as possible. So, I want to talk about three different things, actually. The sales development team excellence from three perspectives. The first one is the sales development team themselves, like the individual contributors there. The other one, and then the management, of course, that is kind of like on the floor. The second one is the organization or the company perspective, and how do you need to be thinking about your sales development kind of like structure and organization and employees for you to be able to be successful, and what are the best companies doing. And then the last one is, and we'll only spend about 2 or 3 minutes there, is how about the prospect, like the person that you're reaching out to? What do they need to feel or think for you to be considered excellent sales development organization? So let's start with the sales development representative perspective, or the sales development team perspective. The first thing to do is to have clear and realistic expectations of what they need to do, right? As a sales development representative, I want to know that, like, when I walk in the door, whatever I am going to be doing, that might be sending emails, making phone calls, researching prospects, adding contact information, or things like that. Hopefully, I want to know that somebody else has done this before. They've tested it. They understand how long it takes to research the contact information. They understand what tools I'm being provided and how those help me. How do I find my accounts? How do I find my contacts? How do I make sure those are high quality? I've seen a lot of, let's say, not so great or non-excellent organizations just dump a bunch of accounts to their sales development team and say, hey, go figure out which ones are good and find the contact information, and then go ahead and make 100 calls a day and send 200 emails. And it does create a lot of work overload, and it's unrealistic, and therefore the results are not going to be there. So first step is know, as a sales development, I want to know, what do I need to do today? What are my daily expectations for how much work I need to accomplish, how many accounts I need to research, how many contacts I need to research, as well as, what do I need to say on the phone? How do I write my emails? Are there any templates I can use? Is there any collateral that I can use? And that will help me, at least as a sales development representative, understand the scope of work and what are the things I need to do on a daily basis to perform. However, it's not only about giving them expectations. Step number 2 is, of course, helping them train and get better at their job. So as an organization, hopefully you're committed to training and developing your employees. And that should include a lot of cold recording training, cold call recording training, as well as any other types of training regarding their emails or even their research or selecting accounts. It really depends what your sales development organization is doing, how big it is, and how you've structured it, right? So smaller companies, when you're hiring your first, second, third sales development representative, most of the time they're doing everything. They're selecting the accounts, they're researching the contacts, they are writing the emails, they're putting those in a sequence, they're even many times selecting their own tools. So they're going to be using Outreach or SalesLoft or something else. Are they going to be finding data from LeadIQ or ZoomInfo or Discover.org? How much do you want to invest in all those things? So excellent organizations have it all figured out. They know their tech stack. They know exactly how it's going to work. They have their SDRs with specific tasks. They know how long it takes to research an account, how many accounts they need per month, how many contacts they need per account. They have segmentations about personas and so on. But even if you don't do, even if you're at that point where your SDRs are doing everything, hopefully you have clear and realistic expectations. And then once they have started the motions and they are starting to work, you know exactly how to train them to get them to be more effective in any, in any of their tasks. On the screen, you will see two things: the ultimate guide to SDR team excellence, where I explain how to onboard, coach, train, and set up your SDR team for your sales development representative success. And second, how you train specifically every person in your organization so that they get really good at cold calling. The third important aspect of your sales development team is actually to understand what's the value of an employee, and how can you train them to a point where they are excellent at what they do, they understand what that means, and also they get compensated properly. So a lot of organizations make the mistake here of running the usual structure of like a 60 or 70% base, 30% commission for their sales development team, 66-33, 60-40. It always ranges around there. However, you need a very strong accelerator when it comes to their compensation, because without it, what's going to happen is your top performer, who is maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6xing the performance of like your average or your entry level SDRs, despite the fact that they're bringing 6 times as much pipeline and eventually revenue, they are only getting compensated 20 or 30% more than the mediocres. So there's a real disparity in compensation. The low performers are getting more on a dollar per dollar compensation for their contribution, while the top ones are not, and that will lower your morale and create a lot of problems. So have clear expectations for what is excellence, and second, compensate your employees so that the best performers are really making 2, 3, 4x the amount that compared to your average ones. And I've written a few blog posts about what is the best, or what is a great compensation plan you can put together. It also helps you with geographical locations, and also how to build a career path for your employees, so they understand what is excellent and how you can pay them. There's 2 more aspects that are important. One of them is going to be that your SDRs get the opportunity to contribute to the team, right? And what I mean by that is you got to be very strategic about how you do this. You can't hire SDRs that have no experience in the role, that are coming out of college or switching careers, and just tell them, hey, go figure it out. Tell us what we need to do. You just need to get meetings. It's not that hard. Go figure it out. Because without any perspective on the industry, and without any perspective even many times on like what it is like to have a job for a long time, right? Maybe some of these employees had done summer internships, or they had worked at a restaurant during school, but now they're at they have an office, they have a job, and it's long term, and they need to succeed. So what they want to do is they're going to get bored in 3 to 6 months unless they're contributing and they see a path for their career. So you need to have that path laid out. What will it take for them to go from where they are today to a bigger, better, more interesting role? Or if they do love the SDR craft, what does that look like for them? How will their salary change? You can't keep them with the same base forever if they're gonna really turn into an incredible sales development rep. So just laying out that foundation. Again, in my if you go to my LinkedIn, you will see the ultimate guide to SDR team excellence. And you will see how you can set up your organization so that your SDRs actually end up contributing to your team, how you can reward them for it, and also how can you help them grow as individuals and help them exceed their goals. Now, that will help your team, especially when it comes to the sales development representatives themselves, in feeling comfortable, feeling valued, feeling well compensated, and being given a path, and being given, you know, the perspective and knowledge that they need to be able to succeed at their job. And that's actually going to have incredible effects for your organization, from reducing turnover or churn, employee churn in this case, however you're going to call it, to increasing morale and just helping you run that organization in a much better, with much better motions. Let's go to talk a little bit more about the company, and what do you need to be thinking on a sales development perspective for you to be able to succeed. The first one is that to understand that when you're building a sales development organization, it's just like building a product. You can't expect to hire your first, when you're building a product, you can't expect to hire your first software developer, put a website together and be like, okay, wait, we're ready to go to market. Or like build your first SaaS application and be like, oh, okay, done. We're ready. Like haven't even talked to anybody. Let's just go. Like we can start selling this, or we can start getting customers for it. Even sales development has a sales learning curve. And what this means is, at the beginning, the purpose of sales development is not to get sales immediately. You're not really trying to get an ROI on it. You're not really trying to put, a $100,000 sales development rep here in San Francisco to bring you, $500,000 in sales in your first year. That is not the purpose. The purpose is to learn. The purpose is to have those conversations, and the purpose is to learn your messaging. So you want to have 20, 40, 100, 200 conversations with different prospects and say, hey, what we do is XYZ for this type of customer, right? We are artificial intelligence for customer support, or we are a network of incredible engineers, or we are a payment solution for e-commerce companies, or we are a retargeting advertising product for this type of client, for B2B SaaS, and some customers are going to be like, oh no, I already do XYZ. I already solved this problem this other way. I'm already doing that. I have this other thing. And you need to constantly iterate your messaging so that you actually get to the point where you have something really, really, really specific that you understand, that brings or like that draws your customer attention, right? And when you can draw that attention, you can start having conversations. So don't obsess about making your sales development team profitable on day one. It's the actual opposite. You probably won't make it profitable. And if you hire too many upfront, right? If you go and hire 6 sales reps on day one and 4 sales development reps, what's going to happen is, since you haven't learned your messaging yet, you're now burning maybe $1 million a year, or almost $1 million a year, with 10 employees, let's say, even just on base salaries plus their taxes and benefits and all that. Yet you don't have that messaging perfectly put together, and therefore you're not going to be able to have the necessary conversations to help those prospects move down the funnel. So be aware of the sales learning curve. The second one is that you need to understand the value of figuring out a profitable sales channel. And Peter Thiel talks about this. He says, if you've tried a lot of different channels and you haven't figured out any of them, your company's dead. If you just figure out one, your growth is practically infinite, right? And it doesn't matter what you're doing, right? It could be Google AdWords, it could be SEO, it could be inbound marketing through blog posts, it could be white papers, it could be conferences and trade shows, or it could be an outbound sales development team, right? Today, due to context, we're going to talk specifically about the sales development team, but you got to think about, not, again, similar to the sales learning curve, not can I make money today? I just started my team, but how could I slowly yet surely constantly make changes to my team so that in 3, 6, 9 months, with that one sales development representative that I hired, with that, with the help of that one coach, or with the help of somebody else who's done this before, I can iterate, 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 iterate on everything. How do we define our market? Who are our target clients? How do we reach out? What are our best emails? What do we say on the phone? What's our value? How do we compare to clients? How do we do our first demo? How do we do our second demo? How do we negotiate contracts? All those things are going to matter. And the purpose at the beginning is not to make money. Don't try to make money straight away. What you need to do is just learn, 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 learn. At some point, you're going to be like, okay, we have it all figured out. Again, you can go back and read that blog post about SDR team excellence. For our organization, what we've done is we now know that when we're defining our contacts and accounts, our ideal customer profile and buyer personas, that's all done by management. Researching those accounts isn't even done by the SDRs. We have a team in the Philippines that researches every account and every contact. And we're using the best-in-class tools. We might be using Discover Org, ZoomInfo, Lead IQ, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Lead 411, Inside View, Datanyze, Everstring. Like, there's so many tools out there. You got to find what is the best combination for your organization and enable a team to be able to research those accounts. After those accounts have been researched, they come back, and we gotta decide what's the sequence. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna make 3 calls, 5 calls, 7 calls, 10 calls? How spread out are they? How many emails are there in between? Are we going to send 2 emails, 4 emails? On the emails, are we going to talk about their pains? We're going to talk about the benefits of the product. Are we going to talk about some of the features? Are we going to talk about competitors? Are we not going to talk about competitors? Are we going to throw ideas at the clients? Like, you need to define that strategy and put it together, right? Are you going to use some LinkedIn messaging? Are you going to send them cupcakes? Are you going to use Twitter? How much research are you going to do in addition to the contact information? Are you going to figure out, what are their previous roles in the company? There's a lot of things that you need to figure out. And again, this is a lot about micro testing and understanding what motions need to happen. After that, you need to figure out, who's going to reach out. Are your SDRs going to be writing emails from scratch or adding a little bit of personalization? Are they going to have snippets, or are they going to have just full emails? And then what is the offer? Are you offering a webinar, a demo, a personalized demo, an in-person visit? You really need to craft, all these things around what you really want to give your prospect. The third point about the company perspective on the sales development team is really understand that the conversations with potential clients are more valuable than just the dollar value of the sales, right? Having a prospect come into the door and do a demo with you in the early days of your company, right? If you have under maybe, I would say $2 to $3 million in revenue, if you're bringing prospects that are 100% outbound, for example, there is certain value in understanding and talking to clients who weren't looking for you, right? When you've been selling all inbound and they're coming to you like, oh yeah, I know what you do. Here are my requirements. I want to do X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. Can you do that? Show me how. Okay, cool. Requirement, check, 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 check. Beautiful. Give me pricing. Okay, let me evaluate this compared to other products. Buy, right? It's very easy. They're already halfway through the buyer's journey. However, when you're doing outbound, it's slightly different. You're going to be talking to people who aren't even aware of the problem. And the value of understanding how you educate your market in regards to what is the problem that they need to solve and what are the benefits they're going to get from it will not only help your sales development organization, but also help your marketing organization in understanding what's the messaging you need to craft to be hyper successful when attracting more clients. And this is going to create a scalable, repeatable process, right? So going back to what Peter Thiel said about growing and figuring out one sales channel, the more you test and iterate on this, the better you're going to get. And when you finally figure out a model that scales, your company is set up for success. But it takes time. I see way too many people hiring one SDR, being like, hey, just go figure it out. Like, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. Go make the phone calls and send the emails and get us meetings. And they really don't value the meetings. What they measure their success on is like, how much revenue have we closed from outbound SDRs? Okay, it's been 6 months, we've closed 0. What happened? This is not working. Okay, let's fire him. And some companies even hire 3 or 4 and then two account executives. And then your company burn goes up so fast. And later on, you just got to fire everybody. it's just a vicious cycle. So start small, start testing, and value the work of sales development beyond just a dollar value contribution. It's about the conversations, it's about the learnings, and it's about figuring it out. Once you've figured it out, you're done. That's it. Now you can scale. Now it's just about getting more SDRs in the door and getting more AEs, right? And always, the bottleneck is always sales development, right? I haven't heard one organization who says, "Hey, we don't have enough account executives, right? We have too many good meetings and not enough people to take them." That's very easy to justify. You go to your CEO or your CFO and you say, "I need more account executives, bring them in," and it happens. It's usually around the quality of the leads, the quality of the conversations, the amount of meetings you're getting, the effectiveness of those, the close rate on them. So if you can constantly test and iterate and figure out, is it that our AEs don't really know how to handle potential clients that are too early in their sales process, right? And we need to educate them on the problem. Or is it that our sales development reps are targeting the wrong accounts? Or is it that, our messaging is wrong and therefore we can't get enough meetings? So you need to do an evaluation of quality versus quantity and start constantly iterating. And you need to have somebody who's very scientific about this process. And if you do that, you can build an excellent sales development team. So a few of the links that you are seeing on your screen, we'll talk about the outbound SaaS sales learning curve, how Peter Thiel mentioned that you just need to figure out one profitable sales channel for your company to grow. Then how to measure your calls versus your emails, right? A big advantage of doing cold calling and being able to have those conversations is that you know exactly where your messaging is failing, right? If you send 10 emails or 100 different emails to all your prospects and you just blast them and you're not getting the meetings, you can never know when they stop reading or what turned them off. Maybe they clicked on your LinkedIn profile and they're like, oh no, like I don't like this company. Maybe they went to your website and they didn't like it. Maybe they were just reading halfway through the email and then they stopped. Or maybe they opened your email, saw your signature, didn't like it. You don't really get the feedback for what was it that turned them off. When you're on the phone, you're like, hey, John, this is Mike. I'm calling from XYZ company. Can we talk about, your go-to-market strategy? Can we talk about your HR department? Can we talk about your recruitment? Can we talk about your finance team? Can we talk about, how you guys are processing payments or whatever? And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. I have 2 minutes to talk about that. You're like, hey, we are a vendor or we are a company that does XYZ. How are you currently processing payments? I'm like, oh, no, we're all covered. We use X. Or like, no, I'm not talking about that part. I'm talking about this other part. I'm not talking about the front, the front line or this thing or this other thing. How are you recruiting or whatever? You understand your messaging much better than anybody else. And when you talk to people and you get pushback, you can understand much better what is failing. And that will inform not only your sales development organization, but also your marketing organization in regards to how they need to be thinking about this process. So that should be really helpful, and that should help you continue to iterate that process to bring more meetings and higher quality meetings that convert at a faster rate. Let's see. You need to understand also the value of sales development, right? And I have 2 links over here that talk about the value. One thing to understand is that sales development is actually helpful for any type of company. I have 2 blogs here. In one of them, I talk about how Boeing or JP Morgan or Caterpillar might be doing sales development to sell, their airplanes, their equipment, or their asset management kind of like services. But it can work for manufacturing. It obviously works for tech. It can work in any industry. And the value is not only selling your product, but it's selling your product to the people who value it the most. And here's what I mean by that. When you're doing kind of like inbound marketing, right? You're doing content or things like that. You might bump into people that are somewhat looking for what you need, and they're somewhat of a good client. Maybe they're too small, or they're too big, or they're seeing things from a slightly different perspective, or they're not using the right tech tool stack that is perfectly complementary to your solution. And therefore, both the contract value and the lifetime value of that client might not be optimal. When you're going outbound, you can choose and pick who you want to talk to. You could say, family history here. My dad runs a company that works with alpaca and llama wool, right? So they can say, this is really high quality fiber. We have this specific combination of cash llama or baby llama that, when you mix it with, alpaca and you put it in the as an inside layer for a heavy, rain jacket, it's an amazing kind of like rock climbing, or adventurous hiking type of jacket you can wear. And therefore, they might want to say, "Oh, are we going to go after, Cotopaxi, Patagonia, Colombia, because they need this type of fiber?" If you just try to do inbound marketing, like it's very unlikely that you'll get exactly the companies that you want. However, if you can go outbound, you can call them, you can email them, and you have a strategy. It can be hugely valuable. A good example is also many of these companies. Sometimes you have products that you need to sell, and there's not a lot of customers who tend to buy them. So when we think about alpaca and llama wool, to give you an example, my dad, in his company, in the process of creating really high quality, thin long fiber, for llama and alpaca wool, they also must be taking out some thick short hairs, and usually the value of those is almost zero. They see it as trash. They see it as dirt. Um, even after the llama wool has been washed and whatever, now they have like tons and tons of these, short, thick hairs that, it doesn't make sense to make a sweater because it's itchy. It's really bad quality. Nobody likes them. Um, and in their finances, they're seeing that as a zero, right? Um, However, if you can find a company to pay for that, even if it's like $1 a pound, that could be a huge profit. And it is only sales development who can go and really find the ideal prospect that can come and buy this type of inventory. So any company that's holding inventory can do this. And if you're in tech and you're selling something with infinite inventory because it's just logging to your platform, then you don't optimize for selling to whoever needs what you have in inventory, but you optimize for selling to the company that will grow their account the fastest, who will take the most advantage of your product, who will have the highest contract, kind of like size, and the most stickiness to your product, and they will get the benefits the quickest, and they understand the problem, because all those things are going to shorten your sales cycle, increase your annual contract value, and so on. And you can optimize and decide where do you want to take your company. You're not reliant on somebody else taking action. So the value of sales development is huge. And as I said, you need to constantly be iterating your process to make your sales development team more effective. Like, you need to commit as a company to enable your sales reps, right? I admire people, or companies in general, like SiftRock. Adam, the CEO, got on the phone, and started sending emails and starting researching accounts, and realized how hard it is to be a sales development rep. And he's committed to now enable that function through the right tools and the right data, and the right resources. And that is hugely valuable. You can't just say, hey, let's hire some recent college grads or people switching careers, put them in that role, and let them be. The other important part to understand is that you need to start thinking about sales development more like marketing than sales, right? And there's two reasons, right? One is the purpose of sales development is just to bring qualified meetings. And hopefully these are kind of like cherry picked. And as I said, you can pick whoever you want. But the second one is that there's also a value in brand awareness. Even if you call a prospect, you're like, hey, we're an XYZ solution for HR, or an XYZ solution for payments, or for tech, or for ad retargeting, or whatever you're doing. Even if they're like, no, I'm not interested, you're like, okay, I'll send you an email with our website just so you can check it out, so that you can have it handy in the future. Outbound's going to drive inbound. Maybe that prospect doesn't need it, but after they check that email, they're going to be like, oh my God, like one of my friends at this meetup I just had was talking about how they need this. I should send them the website. Maybe they want to check this out. And they will start evangelizing your product. So you will see an increase in inbound from your outbound activities. And how are you going to measure that? It's hard, right? It's just kind of like doing marketing. Like, for some things you can measure them, right? Like maybe click-through rates or AdWords, or things like that. But if you're putting a big banner or a huge sign on the highway, like you don't really know exactly what's your ROI on it. And sometimes for sales development, you just gotta do that. You just gotta trust a little bit of the process, start working it out, and trust that outbound will drive inbound. However, don't forget to constantly be iterating. Um, the other thing to do is that you got to understand that in the early days, you need to micro inspect and train your team rather than manage by dashboard. So I've seen mistakes such as like, oh yeah, our sales development reps are bringing 22 meetings per month. And I'm like, oh wow, that's incredible. Like that's a pretty high amount. How are they doing it? And they're like, oh, we do phones and emails and blah blah blah. And then like 4 months later, I'm like, dude, like you guys had the most amazing team, 22 meetings a month per SDR. How's it going? And I was like, oh no, we ended up shutting down our team. And I'm like, what do you mean? What happened? He's like, well, the close rate on them was 0. A lot of people weren't showing up to the meetings, and yeah, it didn't work out. And I'm like, when did you figure that out that it wasn't really working? He's like, it took us 5-6 months. Like, we only saw like 20% of the people show up to the meeting, and then like only 10% of those were converting to actual opportunities. And what happened was they were just looking at the dashboard. They were just looking at the overall numbers. Oh yeah, 22 meetings. That's incredible. However, if they would have gone and inspected every deal one by one, they would have listened to every call recording that booked a meeting or looked at every email. You'll see that many times if you incentivize your reps in a way where they can work their comp, just like sales reps do, they will sometimes not be fully aligned with your organization. So I've seen sales development reps, for example, that will go ahead and they call a prospect. They're like, hey, we want to show you this. Do you have time next week to look at our platform to help you with HR recruitment or whatever? And the person's like, no, I'm too busy. Call me back in February. And rather than rescheduling themselves or sending themselves a reminder to call back in February, they consider that a meeting. They're like, oh yeah, February. They just shoot a calendar invite randomly, and they're like, oh yeah, I booked a meeting for February. Like that's not really a meeting. The person will not show up. But if you're paying, if you're paying your representatives directly on the meetings booked, or you're giving them value for it, then that's what they're gonna do. So you need to really understand how you do that, and also understand who's responsible for what, right? So one of the things that I mentioned in some of these blog posts that you can see on the screen is if you have paired up your SDRs with AEs, right? It's one SDR only books meetings for one AE. You create too many individual funnels, and you can never inspect things properly, right? If you have this one AE that is not closing deals, and you go to him and you're like, hey, why aren't things closing? He's like, well, all the meetings that I get set by our SDR, it suck. Like he's the worst one, and he's just sending me crap, and I can't close it. Well, how are you going to know if it's really the SDR or the AE who's at fault or who needs help in that funnel, right? Well, if you have all your SDRs or one SDR setting meetings for multiple AEs, or you have two SDRs and two AEs, and they're all setting meetings for one another, right? Both SDRs are setting meetings for both AEs, and they're doing half and half. Then if an AE has a lower close rate than the other, it's the AE's fault. If an SDR is booking less meetings than the other, you know that you must inspect that difference. It's not only about the quantity but the quality. So you got to dive deeper. Is your SDR booking more meetings, just putting a lot of fake meetings? Is your one booking less meetings, like more picky, or does he need help with his phone script or his email templates or things like that? So you need to really go dive deeper into the data and listen to every call and inspect every email and figure out what's happening. So you can't manage by dashboards. You need to be managing at a much more granular level. And as I said before, the bottleneck's never the AEs. It's always the quality of the meetings. So you need to understand what the problem is every time, right? Is it you're not getting enough quantity, or you're not getting enough quality? Because if you're getting too many high quality meetings, it's very easy to grow your team. You just hire more AEs, and then you're gonna sell more, right? You gotta train them, an onboarding process. But once one guy knows how to sell, or once the CEO has been able to sell a lot of the product, it's easy to teach the rest of the organization. But the question is, who in your organization is going to teach what the SDR job is about, right? Who in your organization has already figured it out? If you're hiring your first SDRs and they're all entry level and they've never done it for your organization and they've never built a team from scratch, you're going to be in deep trouble. It's really hard to figure out sales development. As you can see, there's so many moving parts and there's so many things to inspect and figure out that you need somebody who has the expertise. So understand that your bottleneck is hardly ever too many meetings, right, that are too high quality, because in that case you can just hire more AEs and it all works. It's either the quantity or the quality of the meetings, and for that, if it's the quality, you got to figure out why is the quality so low. If it's the quantity, you got to figure out, are they spending too much time researching? Are they not calling enough? Are they not sending enough emails? Are those emails not good enough? Are the calls not good enough? There's a lot of things to inspect to increase both the quantity and the quality. So finally, the customer's perspective, I'm out of time. So they got to feel understood. So when you call them, you got to be able to provide some value. They got to feel like the person they're talking to as a prospect is an expert. So your SDRs need to be very well versed in the benefits of your product and why they're going to help this person and how this fits into their organization. Depending on the value of your product, it's very high value. You want to provide a lot of context. You want to do some research. You want to understand their organization, so that you can have a good conversation. And then they need to feel like they have something else to learn from speaking further with you. If they feel like, like they know their business better than you know their business, or they already know everything you're telling them, and you're not providing an interesting perspective, there's no reason for the prospect to talk to you. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, there's a lot of links in the PowerPoint. You can go check them out. If you need further help, if you want to learn more about how to build an incredible sales development organization, just reach out to me. I am Tito Bohrt. I am CEO at Alti Sales. And yeah, happy to connect with you. Have a good rest of the day and enjoy the conference. Thanks. Bye-bye.